Femi was not born rich. In fact, his earliest memories were of dim lanterns, cracked walls, and the sound of his mother's tired footsteps returning from the market after a long day of selling vegetables. Their home in Lagos was small, 2 rooms, 1 dream, and endless hope. His father, once a proud teacher, lived on a pension so small that it could barely feed them for 2 days. But Femi was different. He carried something in his eyes, a quiet determination that whispered, "I will not die poor." He studied hard, refusing to let hunger silence his ambition. Many nights, he read under flickering bulbs until sleep pulled him down. His mother would wake to find him still clutching his notes, drool on his cheek, and the lamp burned out. When he got admission into the University of Lagos to study computer science, the whole family cried. It wasn't just his victory, it was theirs. His parents sold furniture, borrowed money, and worked longer hours just to send him there. He promised he would make it worth it. University life wasn't easy. While his classmates flaunted the latest sneakers and phones, Femi wore the same faded jeans for years. But he didn't mind. He had his eyes fixed on a single goal: success. He spent late nights in the computer lab, learning everything: programming, web development, cybersecurity. The guards often joked that he might as well live there. Hunger followed him like a shadow, but so did ambition. And then came Nana. She was beautiful, effortlessly so. The kind of beauty that made people stop talking for a second. Femi met her at a campus event. She smiled, and for a brief moment, his world forgot its pain. Their love began like a sunrise, soft, warm, full of promise. She believed in him when he spoke of his dreams. He believed she was his destiny. After graduation, reality hit. Jobs were scarce. His parents were aging. And the bills, endless. Months passed with rejection after rejection. He printed hundreds of CVs, but companies only said, "We'll get back to you." They never did. When he finally got a job, it wasn't glamorous fixing old computers, troubleshooting networks in dusty offices. But to Femi, it was a start. Every morning, he wore a neatly ironed shirt and cheap tie and walked proudly to work. That's when Nana came back into his life. Not as a dream, but as a test. She moved in quietly, piece by piece, a box of wigs, perfume bottles, makeup scattered over his tiny table. At first, it felt like love. She cooked, laughed at his jokes, and called him my genius. But soon, the laughter faded. She started comparing. "Do you know Toby?" she would ask. He just started at a bank. They gave him a car. Even a flat in Ikoyi. Femi would smile softly. "Good for him. My own path will open soon." She sighed. "Your path needs to hurry. I can't eat dreams." Her words cut deeper than she knew, but Femi said nothing. He simply worked harder, saved more, and hoped she would understand that love wasn't about luxury, it was about loyalty. One evening, after a long day, Femi decided to surprise her. He bought her favorite suya from the roadside vendor, extra spicy, the way she liked it. He imagined her smile, her laughter when he handed it over. But when he got home, he heard laughter, a man's laughter. He froze. Then he heard her voice, soft, flirtatious, unfamiliar. He pushed the door open. A man sat on the edge of Femi's bed, wearing an expensive watch, perfume that filled the room. Nana stood nearby, nervous and guilty. The world slowed. The suya in Femi's hand felt heavier than stone. The man smirked. "You didn't tell me your brother was coming." "Leave," Femi said, voice shaking but firm. The man chuckled, buckled his belt, and brushed past him like Femi was invisible. The scent he left behind burned more than his words. When the door closed, silence exploded. Nana began to cry. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "What do I think? I just needed help. He was helping me. Financially, by coming here, by sitting on my bed." She looked away, ashamed. "You don't understand. I can't live like this anymore. I needed to fix my phone, look presentable for interviews. I can't keep waiting for someday." Femi sank to the floor. "So this is my punishment for being poor." She dropped to her knees. "No, baby, please, I love you. It was a mistake." And despite everything, the pain, the humiliation, he forgave her. Because his heart had learned mercy long before it learned pride. For 2 weeks, things seemed normal again. But something had died quietly in those days. Trust. Love turned thin like worn fabric. Eventually, Nana left without a goodbye, leaving behind only her perfume and a broken heart. Femi cried for days. But tears didn't pay rent. So he wiped his eyes and went back to work. He decided that pain would be his teacher, not his prison. He worked harder than ever, teaching himself new coding skills, freelancing at night, learning crypto trading during weekends. Slowly, his ideas began to attract attention. One day, his app, a small financial tool he built from scratch, was bought by an international tech company. That moment changed everything. Opportunities came one after another. Within 5 years, Femi became one of the top crypto developers in Lagos. He bought his parents a house, paid off their debts, and finally smiled without pretending. The world that once ignored him now sought his advice. News outlets called him the tech miracle. But deep down, he never forgot the boy who used to go to bed hungry. Then, One ordinary day, as his black SUV slowed near a busy market, Femi saw a woman by the roadside, dirty, thin, clutching two small children. She was begging. Their eyes met. Time froze. It was Nana. Her face was tired, her beauty faded, her once sparkling eyes now empty. The children clung to her legs, hungry and frightened. Femi stepped out of his car slowly. The people around looked on as the rich man approached the beggar. "Femi," she whispered, her voice trembling. He looked at her for a long time, the woman who once told him he wasn't enough, and for a moment, he saw not the betrayal, not the pain, but the broken human being she had become. "Are these your children?" he asked softly. She nodded, ashamed. "Their father left. I have nothing. I'm sorry for everything. Femi, I was foolish." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a check, more than enough to change her life. Her hands shook as he placed it gently in her palm. "Get back on your feet," he said quietly. "The past is gone." Tears streamed down her face. "You still have such a kind heart." Femi smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the only thing poverty couldn't take from me." He turned to leave, but she grabbed his arm. "Why, Femi, after all I did?" He looked at her, eyes calm. "Because you taught me what love without respect feels like. And I never want to be that kind of man." He walked away, not out of anger but peace. As his car disappeared into the distance, Nana clutched the check and fell to her knees, sobbing. For the first time, not out of regret for losing wealth, but for losing the only man who ever truly loved her. That day, Femi didn't feel victorious. He felt free. Because sometimes, success isn't revenge. Years passed. Lagos changed. Taller buildings, louder streets, faster lives. But some hearts carried the same quiet storms. Femi had built a life of peace. His company, Adabanjo Tech Systems, had become a household name. He now mentored young developers, the same way he once wished someone had mentored him. Yet, success had not hardened him. It only made him quieter, humbler, and grateful. Every morning, he still called his mother before work. Every Sunday, he visited her, sitting on the same old bench outside their home, laughing about small things. Money had changed his surroundings, but not his soul. Still, there were nights when he sat alone on his balcony, looking at the city lights and remembering a girl who once laughed in that same dim room he used to rent. He didn't hate her anymore. But sometimes, forgiveness doesn't erase memory, it just makes it softer. The market encounter. It was a rainy afternoon. Femi was inspecting a community project his company had sponsored, free internet access points for local schools. As he walked through the muddy street, handing out umbrellas and smiling at kids, he noticed a small food stall. There she was, Nana, but this time, she wasn't begging. She was standing behind a small wooden table, selling rice and beans with her sleeves rolled up, her hair tied neatly. She looked older, worn, but stronger. For a moment, Femi froze. Their eyes met again, just like that day by the roadside. But this time, her gaze didn't carry shame. It carried gratitude. She straightened, whispering almost to herself, "Femi." He smiled softly. "You remember me?" "How could I forget?" she said, voice trembling. "You helped me when no one else would. That money, it saved me and my children." Femi nodded. "I'm glad it helped." She hesitated, wiping her hands on a cloth. "I've wanted to see you for years. To thank you properly." He looked around. "You're doing well now." Her lips curved faintly. Not rich, but honest, and happy. They stood quietly for a while as the rain tapped gently on the tarpaulin roof. The children, now a little older, peeked from behind her stall, shy but smiling. Femi bent down. "You've grown," he said warmly. "They're my world," Nana whispered. "I promised myself I'd raise them with the truth, and without lies." There was pride in her voice. Real pride. Femi smiled, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was no longer heavy, it was healing. Second chances. A week later, Femi returned to that market, not to inspect projects but to buy food. From her stall, it became a quiet ritual. Every few days, he'd come by, buy a plate, sit nearby, and talk. They talked about life, mistakes, dreams, and how time had humbled them both. One afternoon, she said, "I used to think love meant being with someone who could give me everything. I was wrong. It means standing beside someone when they have nothing and helping them grow." Femi looked at her, eyes gentle. "Maybe we both learned too late." "Maybe," she said softly, "but late is better than never." He smiled. "You sound wiser now. Pain teaches faster than school," she said, laughing quietly. Their laughter carried a kind of peace neither of them had felt in years. A door reopens. Months passed. Femi's company expanded to rural areas, teaching underprivileged youth about coding and blockchain. One day, he invited Nana to join as part of a new initiative, helping women rebuild financially. "I want you to lead it," he said. She froze. "Me? Why?" "Because you understand what it means to lose everything and start again," he replied. "No one can teach that better than someone who lived it." Tears welled in her eyes. "Femi, I don't deserve this." He smiled softly. "You deserve a new chapter." She took the job. In weeks, she became an inspiration, guiding women who once felt hopeless. Her story spread quietly, from one heart to another. Sometimes, she would look at Femi during meetings and see the same patient man who once forgave her when she least deserved it. And every time, she would whisper a silent prayer of thanks. The letter one night, after a long charity event, Nana slipped an envelope onto Femi's desk. When he opened it later, inside was a letter, written neatly, with trembling hands. Femi, I used to think forgiveness was something you gave to others. But now I know it's something you give to yourself. You didn't just save my life. You gave me a reason to believe I wasn't beyond repair. I don't expect your love again, I just want you to know that your kindness made me a better woman. Thank you for not hating me when I was at my lowest. I will carry that grace forever. Nana Femi read it twice. Then he folded it gently, looked out the window at the city below, and smiled. For the first time in years, he felt something deep, not romance, not longing, but peace. The final reunion, a year later, Nana's food initiative had spread across multiple cities. She became a voice for struggling women, speaking on radio shows, helping single mothers start small businesses. Femi attended one of her seminars quietly, sitting at the back. When she spotted him in the crowd, she smiled, eyes shining. Afterward, she walked to him. You came, I wouldn't miss it, he said softly. I never thought life would bring us here, me teaching, and you listening. He laughed. Life has its own sense of humor. They walked outside together, under a golden sunset. Femi, she said after a pause, I'll never stop being sorry. He stopped walking. You don't need to be. You already changed. That's enough. A tear rolled down her cheek. Do you ever think, if things had been different? He looked at her, thoughtful. If things were different, maybe we wouldn't have learned who we truly are. They stood in silence, watching the sun sink over Lagos, two souls who had hurt, healed, and grown. Not lovers anymore, but something deeper, forgiveness made flesh. Years later, when people spoke about Femi Adebanjo, the millionaire who once walked barefoot through Lagos, they often mentioned his genius, his success, his impact. But those who truly knew him would say his greatest achievement wasn't his company, his inventions, or his wealth. It was his heart. Because in a world that celebrates revenge, he chose forgiveness. And that forgiveness not only changed his life, it saved someone else's. Sometimes, the most powerful love story isn't about two people coming together, it's about two souls finding peace apart. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe, and tell me about your favorite part too.